Chapter 11. So embarrassing. Mia sat in the locker room for some time, hoping that someone would come and she'd ask for help, but nobody did. She knew that Rain had an afternoon class to attend and would head there immediately after their martial arts training. Checking around one last time, she got up decisively. She poked her head into the martial arts hall that stood empty, without a single soul. She decided to try her luck. Walking straight into the hall, she couldn't help but feel self-conscious even though she knew no one was there. She used her arms to cover her chest as she walked slowly forward. The building was really big. However, she was glad that the main gym connected to the martial arts training hall was empty. Peeking into the open hall that led to the spacious gym with numerous workout equipment, Mia wasn't surprised to find it completely empty as well. The sun was already setting, and she estimated it was around evening time. Most people would have classes or have been done for the day. The only time the gym would be packed with people was around the morning times, and some at night. Making sure that the space was really empty, she proceeded to walk out, taking slow and tiny steps. She looked around the gym but found nothing to help herself. Standing at the side and building up enough courage, she proceeded to peek outside. She caught sight of a peach-colored fabric lying carelessly on the steps. Beside it was another crumpled-up white fabric strewn carelessly on the steps as they went in descending order. Her clothes. Someone had stolen her clothes and thrown them along the stairs. She quickly hid herself further into the gym as a few passers-by almost caught sight of her. Who could have been so mean as to throw her clothes outside like that? She reckoned it must be someone who really disliked her and was trying to humiliate her again on campus, but why? Though she was aware that most of the students disliked her for being poor and unfashionable, none of them had ever done such a thing to her, apart from glaring daggers at her. This was just too much, tossing her clothes away like that outside. Should I just quickly run out and grab my clothes, ignoring everything else? She murmured to herself in distress. Mia peeked outside again but shook her head at the idea. No way, so many people were outside. Some men were even sitting idly on the steps, while others were standing around mingling with each other. She glanced at her towel that was barely covering her thighs and completely dismissed the thought. How embarrassing would it be if someone saw her like this, not to mention the hundreds of students passing outside. With most of them being the students of her major, they'd certainly click her embarrassing pictures to make headlines in the school newspapers. She paced within the gym back and forth, trying to find solutions to her problem. Then, she decided to just go back to the locker room and wait for Rain's class to be over. Maybe she would come look for her and find her clothes outside. Just when she turned her back to leave the gym hall, she suddenly heard a click sound from the other side of the room, immediately accompanied by the sound of a door opening. Oh no! Mia wanted to run and hide somewhere, but her mind was completely dead at the fact that someone had seen her looking like this. She suddenly felt a pair of eyes on her from behind, but the room was absolutely silent. A girl. Please let it be a girl. She prayed silently in her mind and drew a deep breath as she turned abruptly to face the person. Her breath stopped as she collided harshly against someone. A fresh smell of lemon wafted into her nose. She could feel the dampness of her flattened palms against the person's broad, bare chest. She dreaded looking up at the person she'd just collided against, and due to her embarrassment and shock, she didn't move from her position. This is so embarrassing. She wanted to dig a huge hole and hide herself rather than face this right now. In the midst of her thoughts, the person suddenly shifted backward, leaving a distance between them. She raised her head subconsciously to glance at the person's face and immediately regretted her actions. Standing before her was Leo Bennett, with a towel tied around his narrowed waist, leaving his toned, muscular torso bare. Despite her embarrassment, she couldn't help but notice the ominous snake tattoo bearing half of his chest. He looked nothing like a professor at this moment. He looked like one of those bad boys in movies. His cropped dark hair dripped with water that slid down his forehead. She followed the water drop until she met his narrowed gray eyes. Oh Lord! This time she really wished she had some sort of powers to disappear completely. After completing some tasks in his office, Neil stretched his weary body and massaged his neck. Who would have thought that working as a professor could be so tiring? He would rather find himself doing a job where he could move around, rather than sitting in a damned professor's office for hours, where he couldn't move or do as he pleased, as he was under disguise. He had taken a stroll on the campus to stretch his muscles. Though he did have a few classes in the end and had to return to the office. But unable to hold back, he had decided to move his body a little, so he headed for the gym. There was no way he was going to be able to bear being cooped up without a chance to break a sweat. He just wasn't used to it. If he knew being a professor was going to be a complete opposite of what his mission was about, he would have sent someone else in his place, but who else could do the mission better than he? No one. There was no one like Neil Weiner. Arriving at the gym, he found the whole place was empty, which he preferred. After a few rounds on the treadmill, he decided to take a shower due to the amount of sweat he'd accumulated. Immediately after exiting the shower room, he spotted a girl standing rooted in her spot, with her back facing him. She was wearing an extremely short towel that barely covered her thighs. He'd immediately noticed her revealing long legs with smooth, milky skin. He frowned in displeasure. The female bathroom was on the other side. Why was a girl randomly running around in a towel in the male section? Girls of this university were really going out of their mind to please a man, and that irritates him like nothing else. Did she think she would get his attention wearing such little towel? Not a chance. Deciding to ignore whoever she was or whatever she was doing there, he made to walk around her to the men's locker room when she suddenly turned around, colliding into him. She exuded a sweet strawberry fragrance. Her slightly wet hair clinging to his bare chest, and her flattened palms against his chest suddenly made him aware of her. She remained locked against him, appalled, and he took a step back, creating distance between them as he didn't like body contact. The girl's sudden gasp drew his attention to her face. He immediately recognized her. Wasn't she the girl he was supposed to mentor on some assignment? What was her name again? Am I something? Oh yeah, Hardison. Whatever her name was. She was standing there with a surprised look on her face, her hands covering her chest protectively, with her cheeks a bright crimson color. His gaze couldn't help but roam down to her feet. Ah! The girl shrieked, covering her face in her palms as she scooted into a corner to hide away from him. Unbelievable, he muttered to himself, ignoring her to enter the men's locker room. Was it another trend to go around in nothing but a tiny towel that barely covered anything? Girls these days would really never cease to amaze him with their shamelessness. He had only been in the university for a few days, but he was already tired of the damned mission assigned to him. If only he could get everything done with and get the hell out of this intuition, he would be grateful. He missed his own life on the island. He finished dressing himself and made to leave. Casually glancing at the corner, he found the girl still huddled there with her palms against her face. He frowned slightly as he headed for the entrance. Upon exiting the gym, his eyes landed on a few lumps of fabric scattered around the floor. The colors seemed awfully familiar. Ignoring it, he walked a little farther, then suddenly stopped in his tracks as a thought crossed his mind. He turned to the clothes on the floor, suddenly remembering the chatty girl that came to his office this morning. Wasn't she wearing the exact same clothes? The image of the girl, huddled in a corner, appeared in his mind, and his face turned up in a scowl. Students these days knew nothing but how to play mean pranks on each other. Which one of those idiot students had done these? The girl must have been really embarrassed. He didn't know whether he felt sorry for her, or his instinctive urge to help people had kicked in. Nevertheless, he turned and patiently began to pick the stray pieces of clothes one after another. He paused, spotting something from the corner of his eye. A bright pink underwear was hanging along the empty trash can beside the gym. He frowned deeply, standing there for a while as he struggled whether to go pick it up or just leave it there. Then he turned decisively towards the trash can. Along with the underwear was a black bag inside the trash, which he recognized as the one the girl was holding when she came into his office earlier, due to his heightened observational skills. He picked up the bag and, after a few minutes of internal struggle with himself, he reluctantly picked up the underwear with 2 fingers and hurriedly shoved it into the bag as if it was fire burning his skin. Mia sat huddled in the corner. This was so embarrassing. If she couldn't dig a hole to hide, then she'd just hide, literally, in a corner. She was so embarrassed her skin burned. She couldn't even bear to open her eyes to see if he was gone. Her assigned professor had seen her in this state. She didn't want to live anymore. How would she be able to face him tomorrow? Just when she was wallowing in her own embarrassing situation, she heard the sound of approaching footsteps. Damn, he was still here. She wouldn't open her eyes then. Mia heard the sound of something falling in front of her, then came the sound of retreating footsteps and then complete silence. What was that? Did he leave? After waiting for a while, she finally peeked between her fingers. Seeing that no one was there, she sighed in relief and finally opened her face. She froze, seeing her clothes right before her, along with her bag and shoes. Did someone help her get those? She quickly stood up to look, but no one was there. Her eyes darted in contemplation. Leo Bennett? Did he bring her clothes for her? A bright smile appeared on her face. Such a weird man, he had helped her without a word. Picking up her clothes on the floor, along with her shoes and bag, she quickly fished inside her bag and found her phone inside. She breathed a sigh of relief. Her hands pulled out something in the bag that made her pause. A streak of red instantly appeared on her cheeks. Did he see those? She shook off the thought, stomping her legs on the floor in frustration. Did she really have to get embarrassed today like this? That too in front of her professor? Ah, this was what they called a miserable life. She picked up the rest of her clothes and headed for the locker room to change. Before she exited the gym, she couldn't help but turn and glance at the empty place one last time. Who could have done this to her? Such a prank was nothing to joke with. Apparently, the person had probably wanted her to embarrass herself by walking out in a tiny towel. Had Mr. Bennett not arrived today, she couldn't even imagine what could have happened. Her eyes suddenly turned cold. Whoever it was should better be prepared. She was a patient person, but she was not a pushover. The person had better not let her find them. Thinking about Leo's grumpy attitude, and the ominous snake tattoo on one side of his chest, she frowned. How strange for the school to accept someone like Leo Bennett as a professor, with such looks and that tattoo. It was a surprise he was assigned to teach. Chapter 12. Neil Wayner. In a small garden behind the Ivy Grove Institute Library, a few sheds were built for recreation with chairs and table sets under the sheds for students. Diane sat relaxing on a recliner as she tapped her phone, letting out small giggles. She was currently checking out the comments on her last post, which was a picture of her in the garden admiring flowers. Merely seconds after posting, she had already garnered thousands of comments from countless admirers and fans. As she was giggling at the lovely comments, two girls approached her, and she immediately sat up as she sighted them. "Is it done?" she asked excitedly. "All done," one of the girls, in a pair of pale green matching blouse and shorts, replied, sitting leisurely in another chair beside Diane. Diane sighed with a smirk, an evil light glinting in her eyes. "Good. I knew I could count on you, Sally." "So, where's the proof?" she complimented, then asked. The other girl quickly presented her phone to Diane after tapping on a video. "I've connected the CCTV cameras in the gym to my phone, so we can clearly see how the bitch humiliates herself," the girl sneered. "How smart." Diane gave a smile to Sally, who seemed satisfied with herself. The screen lit up with the image of a girl in a towel frantically searching the lockers. A giggle escaped Diane's lips. Then the image shifted to the girl peeking outside of the gym to see her clothes across the stairs. "Go on, go get your clothes. Little rat, you dare call me a dog? Now, who's the lost puppy roaming naked in the gym? Go on, and show everyone who the dog is." Mia's actions and how she moved nervously along the halls gave Diane immense satisfaction. But as if it wasn't enough, she suddenly found herself wishing they'd taken the towel as well. Just the thought of seeing Mia strut around naked and humiliating herself brought her a feeling of joy, and she couldn't help but put it on her tabs for the future. However, her face, which had initially been up in a big smile, suddenly fell as a tall, handsome figure came into view. He was currently in a towel tied around his waist, his bare chest chiseled, bearing inks. He carried a dignified aura as he walked. The water dripping from his deep black hair, laid back from the shower, accentuated his refined beauty, which wasn't at all reduced even from the tacky footage of the CCTV. Her face twisted in anger as she bellowed to the two girls, "Why is he here?" The two girls quickly panicked, trying to defend themselves. "He wasn't there when we left," Sally quickly said. "Then why is he here now?" Her voice rose angrily before she drew in a deep breath, realizing that she'd lost her composure. "Good. It's good that someone's here, at least. He'd see her as a lowly wretch that she is." She recalled the adoring gaze in Mia's eyes when she spotted the professor in class the other day and sneered. The little bitch probably liked him. Good then, with this she would get her head out of the clouds. But the next image made her clench her fist so tight her fingers were boring into her palms. The incredibly handsome man was standing rooted in a spot with the girl in a short towel clinging closely onto his chest. From the camera's point of view, it seemed like they were in a close embrace. It looked so intimate that Diane almost smashed the phone in anger. That bitch! She even tried to seduce him. How dare she? Her voice rose so loud it attracted the attention of the nearby students in their various sheds. However, no one could clearly see who she was as her shed was concealed. By now Diane had already gotten up from her seat in anger. When she picked up the phone again, she was met with the scene where Neil was walking into the gym holding Mia's clothes in his arms. Something finally snapped in her as she furiously smashed the phone on the floor. That little slut? One line, she keeps crossing one line after another. Okay, she's stepped on the final one. I'll make her regret ever crossing my path. Her breaths came in heavy as she spoke, and her beautiful and gentle face twisted up in rage. The two girls who were behind her wordlessly exchanged weird and somewhat frightened glances with each other. Mia arrived home exhausted, dragging her feet. The incident today had completely drained her both emotionally and physically. To top it off, the professor had seen the most vulnerable and mortifying things happen to her today. But despite his grumpy attitude, he was really sweet and kind-hearted to help her get her clothes. What she couldn't shake off was those ominous snake tattoos on his toned chest. He could pass for a top-tier movie star. He had a bad boy vibe without his suit on. He was everything but a professor, Mia thought as she opened her room's door. She quickly took her shower and returned to the room. She wore her comfortable pajamas and picked her guitar and journal, where she always wrote down all of her emotions. However, as she opened the first page of her purple journal, she stopped at the picture she'd glued on its first page years ago. Mia had the habit of collecting cute images and anything that fascinated her to glue on her journal. But what surprised her was that on the first page of her journal was a cut image of a pair of gray eyes. She remembered even before she met that gray-eyed professor, she'd liked gray eyes because they reminded her of something she couldn't remember no matter how much she tried to recall. It was like a locked memory or a long-lost dream. Mia picked her guitar and began to subconsciously play while she sang along with the mellow tone. In a world of shadows, where memories gently play, there are gray eyes, lost in the past's sway. Whispers of days gone by, a lingering dream, they move alone, a dance in memory's stream. Moments that slipped away, held in that gaze so deep, each look a story, lost but still to keep. In the sea of the past, where time quietly flows, the gray eyes explore, a tale that no one knows. She stopped and gazed blankly at the blanket of twinkling stars in the night sky through her window. Perhaps, she was just being obsessed with gray eyes to the point she was feeling attached to anyone with that eye color, Mia thought to herself. Hey! Ah! She jumped in fright as Owen, her childhood best friend, who lived next door, suddenly appeared behind her, shouting, which startled her back to reality. She hadn't even noticed him enter her room. What's wrong with you? How many times have I told you to knock before entering my room, Owen? We are no longer kids. What if I was undressing? Mia glared at him as he came to stand before her, close to the window. Owen shrugged casually. I did knock, but it seems you are too busy dreaming to hear the sound. He said as he also looked outside the window where she had resumed to stare at the stars. It was a very bright night with the moon half full, illuminating the streets along with the broken street lamps. Actually, it had already become a habit for Owen to barge into her room without knocking, as when they were still kids, they didn't care about privacy and entered each other's room anytime. But since Mia turned 13, she had warned him to always knock. And he had done just that earlier, but she didn't respond. Owen glanced at Mia as she fixed her gaze on the sky. Her almond-shaped eyes shone brightly with the light's reflection, making her light brown orbs glitter. The two dips in her cheeks were prominent as she bit on the inside of her cheeks out of habit. Her beautiful lips curved up slightly. Brown curly tresses cascaded down her shoulders, pulled away from her face with a red hair bow. The pale pink sweater she was wearing looked 2 sizes bigger than her. There seemed to be that longing look in her eyes. She always had that look when she was longing for something or thinking of something important. Owen's eyes stared unblinkingly at the girl he had come to know more than anyone in his life through the years they'd been together. His gaze was so intense that had Mia been paying attention, she'd have noticed it. Right now his usual lazy appearance had disappeared. The look in his eyes was gentle and soft. He quickly averted his eyes as Mia shifted in her seat with a sigh. Shaking his head slightly, he regained his normal lazy appearance. What are you thinking about? Sitting there like a gnome? He asked, disinterest laced in his tone. He slightly leaned forward. Have you finally fallen in love with me, and you're thinking of 1,000 ways to confess? He added in a mocking tone. This time he got her attention as she turned to face him, whacking him hard on the thigh. Ow! Don't you know it's bad to beat a guy? And why is your hand that painful? Just look at how skinny they are. He joked as he pulled her wrist and flailed it in the air. Mia smiled, placing her guitar on one side and closing her journal. She said, "No matter how skinny my hands are, I can still hit you." Her tone equally mocking. He smiled back, looking as she tilted her head back to look at the sky, knowing fully well that she'd dismissed his earlier words as a joke. Actually, he was joking. However, he also knew that somewhere deep inside, he secretly wished it were true. But how could it? She was his childhood friend, and she'd only ever see him as that. The smile on his face suddenly turned bitter. Mia Harrison might not know this, but she was the only reason he had lived this long. Mia continued to observe the brightly lit sky. However, this time, her mind had shifted to something else. How was she going to walk into Mr. Bennett's office tomorrow for her project after she'd embarrassed herself? Furthermore, her project wasn't complete yet. She still had one last step to make it perfect enough to grant her good grades. Not to mention she really wanted to know who had dared done such a thing to her today. If she had stepped out of that gym with that skimpy towel, she would have been on the school newspaper's headline. She could already imagine what would be written. Mia Harrison, the suicidal person who stole Diane Foster's story, has gone crazy to walk around the campus half naked to attract men. Owen noticed how her expression shifted from a smile to an angry frown. "Just who are you secretly planning to murder in your head?" he asked while picking up a snack beside Mia's bed and munching on it. "Someone in school is secretly plotting against me, and if I get my hands on them, I'll... I don't know what I will do, but for humiliating me in front of Leo Bennett, I want to beat that person up so bad," she said indignantly. Owen chuckled at her antics. Then he asked, noticing her words, "Right, and who's this Leo Bennett?" The question came out casually. "He's a man with the most beautiful eyes." She placed her elbow on the windowsill, her palms against her cheek with a faint smile as she continued to look at the sky. Owen almost choked on the snack he was eating, hearing her words. "Beautiful what?" He cleared his throat and asked. "Tisk, you deaf or something?" I said, "He has the most beautiful pair of gray eyes," she explained as if displeased for being interrupted from her thoughts. "Yeah, I heard that, but who's he? Is he another celebrity with gray eyes you suddenly have a crush on, again?" "Dream on. Nursing a crush on someone who doesn't even know you exist is pointless. Better give up your obsession with gray-eyed celebrities," he sneered. She scoffed. "Doesn't know I exist? Of course he knows I exist. And for your information, I have no crush on him but his eyes." Owen shook his head with an unbothered smile. "I wonder how long this one will last. Another one of your silly little crushes on gray eyes. That has nothing to do with you. Besides, don't you have work to do for your father? Mother, Owen is here sitting, not going to assist his father again." She yelled in an attempt to chase him away so she could have her time to think alone. Owen raised his hands in surrender, grinning as he stood up to leave. "Fine, keep dreaming then, of some Prince Charming with gray eyes that will never know of your existence," he teased. "Go away." She stood up and pushed him out of the room, earning a chuckle from him as the door slammed on his face. After sitting down for a while on the bed, her phone rang. "Mia, are you okay? Sorry, I just saw your message." Rain's worried voice came through immediately she picked up the phone. "I'm fine, really, I was just surprised," Mia replied. "I'm so sorry. A friend texted me that the class had already started, and I needed to submit my assignment because the professor arrived early. I left after sending you a text that I was off to class. I didn't know something like that could happen. I'm really sorry." Rain's voice was filled with remorse. Mia knew she couldn't make her not go to class for something they both didn't know would happen. "There's no need to apologize. Besides, no harm was done. Don't blame yourself," Mia assured. Rain sighed. "But who could have done something like that? And right, how did you end up getting your clothes? I really have no idea who it was." Then her voice turned gentle. "But, can you guess who it was that helped me?" Rain rolled her eyes. "There you go again with the guessing. I really don't." "Oh, Mr. Bennett?" Rain asked, her voice lightened up in realization. Mia chuckled. "He's such a hero, I tell you. I was so scared, so embarrassed, and despite his grumpiness, he went out and picked up my clothes for me. How sweet. He is such a gentleman." "You're crazy, Mia. You're certainly not the first person to have a crush on your teacher, but you're the first to go all crazy about him. Anyone could have helped you in that situation. But don't you think it might have something to do with Diane? Rain chuckled slightly, then asked, Diane? Why would she do that? Well, I don't think so. I mean, why would she want to play tricks on me when she's the one who stole my story? Then who else doesn't like you and would want to humiliate you? A lot of people in that university don't like me, but I don't know who could do such a thing, Mia replied. I'll try to look into it tomorrow. Maybe I'll find out who was behind this if I look into the CCTV, Rain said, before changing the topic. By the way, about your project, have you gotten the clues on how to locate Neil Wayner for the interview you planned before you stumbled upon that story about the drug syndicate? Neil Wayner will forever remain a mystery to our country, Rain. I have tried my best, but despite that, I still have no clue where he lives. Mia pouted disappointedly. Neil Wayner was a well-known soldier in their country. He had joined the army at the age of 13 and made a name for himself in every war. However, ever since he had made a name for himself, he had never showed himself to the public. He remained mysterious about wherever he lived. In every news agency, reporters have worked their asses out to locate him and get an interview, but nobody had ever succeeded. It was said that any news agency who succeeded in getting Neil Wayner's interviewed would climb up to the top in the country. Mia had ambitiously thought that if she succeeded in doing that, it would be much easier for her future career, but just like every other professional journalist in the country, her amateur research had come to a dead end. Well, what do you plan to submit to Mr. Bennett tomorrow for the assignment? Rain asked, concerned. Chapter 13. I break their illusions. In the half-moonlit night, a lone figure rumbled through the deserted streets on a sleek black motorcycle. Clad in a matching black leather jacket and trousers, the rider wore a dark helmet that concealed his face. The roar of the engine echoed through the empty lanes as he kicked the bike to a sudden halt in front of a bar. With a swift motion, he swung his long legs off the motorcycle, the black leather absorbing the impact. The figure removed the black helmet, revealing tousled dark hair. His gray eyes scanned the desolate surroundings before striding purposefully toward a dimly lit bar at the end of the street. Entering the establishment, he took a seat at the counter. The dim glow highlighted the sleek lines of his black attire. He ordered a drink, and as he waited, his sharp gray eyes surveyed the room. Just as he took a sip, another man approached, sliding onto the bar stool beside him. "Hey, Leo Bennett," he greeted with a mocking, friendly tone. Neil's gaze turned icy as he shot the newcomer a sharp glare. "I hate that name. Don't call me that again, Liam," he warned, his voice low and tense. He had been hearing all the professors address him with that name. He was already tired of it. The man addressed as Liam raised his hands in mock surrender, a smirk playing on his lips. "Relax, man," he laughed. "So, how's your life as a professor going at the university, Neil?" Neil clenched his teeth, resentment flickering in his gray eyes. He despised his mission of posing as a professor, but he wouldn't give his friend the satisfaction of witnessing his frustration. "Good," he replied tersely, masking the turmoil beneath his calm facade. Liam leaned back on his stool, a lopsided grin on his face, his low-cut hair giving him a casual yet sharp appearance. Dark eyes twinkled with mischief as he regarded Neil, his longtime friend, with an overwhelming aura of stoicism. "So, Neil," Liam began, swirling the ice in his drink, "how's the mission unfolding in the Ivy Grove Institute? Have you found any clues yet, or are you too busy attracting the girls?" His tone carried a hint of amusement, and he shot Neil a playful side glance. Neil's expression remained stone cold, his gaze fixed on the swirling liquid in his glass. "It's progressing," he replied curtly, his voice revealing little emotion. Liam chuckled, undeterred by Neil's stoic demeanor. "Progressing? Huh? You better not get too swayed by the beauties, unless you want your head severed clean by General David," he teased, knowing full well Neil wasn't the type to mess around, not to mention when he was there for a mission. He would puke blood the day he found Neil giving any female, apart from his longtime best friend, Davina, attention without having any purpose for his mission. Taking a sip of his own drink, Liam continued when Neil didn't reply, "Must be thrilling to be a professor, lecturing unsuspecting students on whatever you teach them in class." Neil's icy stare intensified, but Liam seemed immune to the cold front Neil exuded. "Thrilling indeed," Neil replied dryly, his words laced with sarcasm. Thrilling was the last thing on his mind when it came to Ivy Grove Institute. Sitting in an office all day and going to those stupid classes to teach spoiled brats and annoying girls who play stupid tricks on each other was unlike him. And he wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't the only thing to make him let go of all the years of hatred and vengeance in his blood. Ever since Neil had turned his back on a normal life after an incident that drastically changed his life years ago, he'd hated mingling with normal people who weren't as straightforward as the soldiers he'd grown up around. They irritated him to no end, and if it wasn't a necessity for him to come out of seclusion, he wouldn't be in Zen City now, but in the camp commanding new recruits or on his island estate. 15 years ago, he had lost the spark of life. 15 years ago, life had stripped and deprived him of happiness and a normal life. And 2 years ago, he had done something unforgiving. Now, he was just a man on a mission to fulfill the promises he'd made to his 12-year-old self after that incident. Liam, chuckling, snapped Neil back to his presence. Clinking his glass against Neil's with a mischievous glint in his dark eyes, he said, "I always knew you'd make an excellent educator, Neil. But jokes apart, let's get to business," he said, his humor immediately vanishing as he asked, "Have you found the girl who revealed the news about Doc Kroll to the news agencies?" "Yes, though I haven't asked her any questions yet. I plan to do that tomorrow," he said nonchalantly. "Wow, that's good progress, man," Liam praised as he patted his back. Then he asked, "How about the main mission? Any clues on that yet?" Neil's demeanor turned even more serious at that question, his gray eyes darkened dangerously. "No, everything looks clean to the eyes, but not to me. The school will be throwing an event of some sort in a few months. I plan to get to the bottom of everything with the school owners by then. For now, I will focus on the girl who let out the news. But I hope as hell she wouldn't end up annoying the fuck out of me in the process, or else." Liam, who understood his friend's no-nonsense attitude, knew full well how Neil wouldn't tolerate people who are irresponsible and who speak too much without saying anything. Liam couldn't help but pity the students at the Ivy Grove Institute. Liam slightly chuckled, patting Neil's back with a playful camaraderie. "Just don't go breaking a student's arm with that temper of yours, Professor Bennett," he joked, his humor cutting through the tension like a well-honed blade. Neil shot him a sidelong glance, his expression unyielding. "I don't break arms, I fucking break their illusions," he retorted with a deadpan delivery that betrayed no hint of amusement. Undeterred, Liam laughed heartily, savoring the banter. "Ah, the wise words of Neil Wayner. I can see why they picked you for this undercover mission," he quipped, taking another sip of his drink. Neil scowled slightly at the mention of his assigned duty, but then he suddenly recalled a certain someone. "They assigned me to supervise an annoying girl's assignment," he grumbled, his displeasure evident. Liam's eyes gleamed with amusement. "An annoying girl, you say? Is she at least easy on the eyes?" he asked with a playful smirk, already reveling in Neil's impending irritation. Neil's deadpan stare intensified as he replied, "I wasn't sent to Ivy Grove Institute to observe beauty." Liam burst into laughter, clapping Neil on the back once again. "Come on, man, even a man of few words like you can at least admit when someone's attractive. Don't tell me your cold nature is blind to beauty as well," he teased, wiggling his brows. Neil's response was a nonchalant sip of his drink, but the subtle twitch at the corner of his lips betrayed a begrudging acknowledgement of Liam's jesting camaraderie. The duo, seemingly worlds apart in temperament, shared a history that bound them together despite their differences. The next day when Mia arrived at school, as she didn't have any morning classes today, she decided to go to the library to catch up on some articles that would help her with her assignments, as she couldn't find what she needed on Google. Only some past research made by professional journalists would help her. She had to make preparations for the project she would be taking to Mr. Bennett before 2 o'clock. However, as she was climbing the stairs of the library, her phone vibrated in her bag. She stopped and fished it out to see it was a message from Rain, who was supposed to be in class this morning. "Come and meet me at the gym hall immediately," read the message. Mia wondered why Rain would be at the gym instead of being in class. She made a turn on the stairs and headed to the gym hall. In a hurried rush, Mia burst into the gym hall, her steps echoing through the empty space. There, she spotted Rain seated on one of the gym equipment, her focus buried in her phone with a deep frown on her face. Mia approached, concern etched on her face. "Rain, what are you doing here? You should be in class," she questioned, glancing around the empty gym. Rain looked up. Instead of answering Mia's question, she gestured for her friend to come closer. Intrigued, Mia stepped closer, and Rain angled her phone to show the CCTV footage from yesterday's incident in the hall. As the images unfolded on the screen, Mia's eyes widened in disbelief. Two of Diane's lackeys were caught on camera, sneaking into the locker area and brazenly taking Mia's clothes. The shock and humiliation Mia had felt resurfaced, compounded by the realization that Diane was behind this audacious act, even after stealing her assignment project and labeling her as an irresponsible student who plagiarized someone else's work. What could she have done to make this spoiled rich brat come after her like this? Ever since Mia had arrived at this university, Diane would always give her dirty looks but had never approached her until they were given that assignment, and now that she had already humiliated her in public, she still dared to want to ruin her image in school completely. Mia's hands curled into fists, rage simmering beneath the surface. Before she could express her anger, Rain clicked her tongue and said, "I knew it, Mia. That lying bitch is behind all of this. Where are you going?" Rain called out as Mia turned and started to walk away. "I am going to confront her. I want to know what she wants from me." "I will be fine. You can go ahead to your morning class," Mia replied over her shoulder. Mia and Diane had the same classes, so obviously Diane also wouldn't be in class by now. Mia asked around and, to her luck, she didn't have to look far before she spotted the ladder under the shed close to the library building. Diane was seated cross-legged on one of the chairs under the shed. She was wearing a black dress that barely covered her smooth thighs. Her blonde hair was tied in a ponytail with a black choker around her swan neck. She was smiling at something Sally, her friend, was saying when Mia approached them. As there were no people around, Diane didn't bother to hide her dislike towards the plain Jane of the university. But then, to rub it in, she sized up Mia. Well, look who has come to finally apologize for stealing my project," said Diane, flashing Mia one of her sweet, flowery smiles that didn't reach her eyes. Mia didn't bother to argue with her on the project again. She went straight to the point. "Don't you have any shame at all, Diane? I know what you did yesterday." She shifted her gaze to the two girls standing beside Diane. "You sent them to take away my clothes so I could embarrass myself on campus." "Why? What have I ever done to you?" Diane's smile immediately vanished. Standing up from the chair, she came to face Mia. "Don't act like you don't know what you did to me in high school, Mia. Those memories are still fresh in my mind." Mia was taken aback by those words. What she did to Diane in high school? Could it be that this spoiled brat was high on drugs or something? "What are you trying to say, Diane? If I remember clearly, we didn't go to the same high school. I don't even know of your existence until I came to this university." Mia had attended a public high school on Whispering Way Street, and she would be insane to think someone like Diane Foster, the daughter of one of the governants of Ivy Grove Institute, would attend such a school. Mia thought, aware that there are more things she didn't know about her own life. Chapter 14: Beauty with No Brains. Diane chuckled amusingly at Mia's denial of knowing who she was in high school. Mia had been the most popular girl in junior high school then, Diane thought. She would never forget how she'd been treated like trash despite her father's wealth. Though one thing Diane didn't understand was how her childhood bully had suddenly become poor and plain now. "Deny knowing me all you like, Mia, but I will make you regret ever stepping your foot into this university for what you did to me in junior high," threatened Diane. The hate in Diane's eyes was unmistakable. Mia couldn't help but think perhaps the girl was starting to go crazy. She must be cooking up excuses to hate on her for no reason, because Mia could still remember all her activities in high school. Furthermore, they had no rich kids in their run-down school, but here was Miss Diane claiming to know her in high school. Before Mia could think of anything to even say, Diane smirked and spoke again. "I can't believe you are foolish enough to put your pictures on the list of the participants to join the school's event with how poor your family is now, Mia." She burst into laughter and her two lackeys laughed along with her as if they'd heard something funny. "I wonder how she would be able to afford the dresses for the competition," said one of the two girls. Mia was taken aback again for the second time. What was wrong with these girls? Why do they keep accusing her of something she hadn't done? "I don't know what you were talking about. I didn't put any pictures of mine to participate in that event. You can go and take the spotlight and shove the crown down your throat for all I care, Diane." Saying that, she turned on her heels to leave when she was stopped by Diane, who pulled her wrist. "You are good at pretending, aren't you? Keep acting innocent, but I want you to know one more thing. Stay away from the new professor, because he has asked me out on a date today." If I see you anywhere close to him again. She paused, her voice dropping into a dark tone. I will make your life even more of a hell in this university. Mark my words, Mia. Mia jerked her wrist away from Diane. Do whatever you like, Diane, but I have no time to argue with you. She didn't linger there and left the girls alone. Ah, Diane, I really can't believe Mr. Bennet has asked you out today, Sally exclaimed in excitement. Hearing those words, Diane's dark expression softened immediately. She smiled. Of course, no man can ever resist my beauty, not even our new professor. I didn't even have to try so hard before he hit on me. She smirked arrogantly. Diane hadn't actually expected the new professor to ask her out for lunch today. It had come as a surprise for her to wake up to find his message. Of course, only a blind man would look past someone like her. And Mr. Bennet was no blind man. She had never seen any man as well built and as handsome as him. She had fallen in love with him at first sight. Even though he hadn't paid attention to her at first, she had sworn to make him notice her, but who would have thought she didn't even have to try so hard? Diane laughed in amusement. I can't wait to meet him. Mia returned to the library in anger. She couldn't believe Diane would cook up something as stupid as claiming to have attended the same high school as her. Not to mention she even cooked up another story about Mr. Bennet asking her out on a date. Mia couldn't help but scoff. Diane sure likes to think so highly of herself to think someone like Mr. Bennet would ask her out. He doesn't seem like the kind to waste time with his students. She could bet her life on it that Diane was being delusional again. After Mia finished the things needed to be done in the library, she attended one more class before going to the voice training room to practice. By the time she finished there, it was already 5 minutes to 2. She quickly gathered her books and bag. Mr. Bennet had specifically said, 2 o'clock tomorrow. If you're late this time, then consider your assignment failed. She dared not delay. She had to give him the impression of being a responsible student. Furthermore, she was kind of looking forward to seeing those gray eyes of his. Mia briskly walked towards Block 29, the anticipation of meeting Mr. Bennet fueling her steps. As she approached his office, she knocked on the door 3 times, but the silence that followed made her cautiously turn the doorknob. The door swung open easily, revealing an empty office. Undeterred, Mia stepped inside, glancing at the clock. 2 minutes to 2. Perhaps Mr. Bennet was still in class. It would be best if she waited in the office for him. She settled into a chair beside his desk. The papers and files on the desk were neatly arranged, and the office still held the lingering addictive scent of his masculine cologne. She couldn't help but also notice that he had no pictures of his or his family on the desk. Surprisingly, Mr. Olson's framed picture along with his wife's was still in the office. Perhaps it was because Leo was a substitute, she thought. Mia stretched and yawned as minutes stretched into an hour. But there was still no sign of him. Deciding to pass the time with her phone before she would end up falling asleep, she logged into the school forum. However, her attention was abruptly caught by a trending post with a caption that read, "The Adonis Professor Bennet has finally gone out with our school belle." Mia clicked into the pictures and found snapshots of Diane and Leo, taken in a restaurant just across the university. Diane wore a radiant smile as if Leo had shared a joke. As she scrolled down the post, her expression turned somber. She felt an unexpected pang in her chest as Leo's gray eyes seemed to light up while looking at Diane. "OMG, look how good they look together," said the commenters, who were obviously Diane's bootlickers. "I knew our new professor would fall for Diane's beauty. But I'll admit, I never expected Mr. Leo to be the kind to get easily swayed by beauty." Mia read through the comments. It dawned on her that Diane hadn't fabricated the story about Mr. Bennet asking her out. The proof was right there in the pictures. Mia sat there, her emotions a mixture of surprise, disappointment, and an unexplained twinge of jealousy as she saw him looking at Diane with those eyes. Mia stood up from the chair. She would be wasting her own time waiting for Mr. Bennet, who was obviously enjoying his time with Diane. He had been the one to say he disliked irresponsible people, and also made it clear she must not be late, but it turned out he was the biggest irresponsible man to keep her waiting without showing up, when she had deadlines for her assignments. Failing this could cause her to fail her course and lose her scholarship. Seated across from Diane in the upscale restaurant, Neil feigned interest in the menu, his gray eyes occasionally flickering up to meet her blue gaze. Diane, oblivious to Neil's ulterior motives, smiled sweetly, thinking this was a casual date. She had already set up her friends in the restaurant to take their pictures together. After that, she would mark her territory on the man and announce it on the university forum. Neil dropped the menu, leaning towards the table and propping his elbows on it. He clipped his fingers together and rested his chin on them. Your news project on the drug syndicate was quite impressive. Diane, twirling a strand of her blonde hair, blushed with pride. Oh, thank you, Leo. I worked really hard on it. I even risked my life to get that information. Of course, everyone thought she did a good job in finding that story. Revealing it had unknowingly saved many lives that would have been lost if Doc Kroll had successfully planted the bomb at the shipment port to cover his illegal activities from the authorities. However, the truth was she hadn't even lifted a finger. That plain Jane had been stupid to risk her life to get the information and make it easier for Diane to steal the spotlight. Neil's lips twitched into a subtle smirk as he decided to probe a bit deeper without revealing his true purpose. I'm curious, though, how did you manage to get such exclusive information? It's not easy to crack such information that could have cost your life like that. He casually sipped the wine in his glass. Diane's sweet smile flustered a bit, but she quickly composed herself. Seizing the opportunity to impress him, she leaned forward on the table. Well, you know, I have my ways. I am too smart for my own good. I am a beauty with brains. Don't you see how good we will be as a couple? Neil's impatience simmered beneath his composed exterior. He was using every bit of sanity to stop himself from banging his palms on the table to end her shitty, irritating attitude. How could someone like this girl risk her life to get such information? He had tried to question her on where and how she stumbled upon that information, but Miss I'm Too Pretty hadn't said anything that indicated she knew of those information. Neil acted as if he didn't hear her last words and said, impressive, indeed. But, I've heard the authorities have been following this syndicate for a while now. And none of them had succeeded. You don't seem like the type to risk your life. Furthermore, I find your details were eerily similar to another reporter's work. Diane's smile faltered, and she nervously played with her silverware. Oh, really? Well, great minds think alike, I guess. However, I don't think the information I gave in my report has ever been published by any news agencies before. Neil's expression remained unreadable, his manipulative side coming into play. I admire your dedication, Miss Foster. It's just that sometimes, unintentional mistakes happen, like accidentally using someone else's work. Have you ever experienced that? He would be damned to believe this little princess was the one to get the information she gave. Diane suddenly felt uneasy as she met his unwavering gray eyes that stared at her as if he was searching for something. She smiled and attempted to divert the conversation. If anyone found out what she'd done to Mia, her reputation in the university would come shattering down. Let's not talk about school stuff now, Mr. Bennett. We're here to enjoy ourselves, right? As Diane continued to flirt, oblivious to Neil's growing irritation, he concluded that the girl before him was nothing more than a skilled liar and a thief of someone else's hard work. He couldn't help but wonder whose work she'd stolen. Neil's lips twitched into an irritated sneer as he saw through her facade. Enjoy ourselves? Is that what you think this is, Miss Foster? I don't appreciate being played. Enjoy your meal, he said as he abruptly stood up from the chair. The chair made a cracking sound on the floor as he pushed it back with force. Neil stormed out of the restaurant, ignoring Diane as if he hadn't just been speaking to her a moment ago, his frustration mounting with each step. He briskly walked through the evening air, his mind consumed by irritation. Though as he left the building, he suddenly recalled his appointment with the girl he was asked to supervise. But the thought of dealing with another irresponsible, annoying student, particularly whatever her name was assignment, only added fuel to his annoyance. She could go to hell with her damn assignments for all he cares. He also had his own assignment at Ivy Grove Institute, and he would be doing just that. He had no desire in facing another beauty with no brains again today. Chapter 15 Commotion at the Bar. Mia was annoyed beyond words as she returned home. She couldn't believe Mr. Bennett had forgotten about their appointment just to have fun with Diane. She had thought he was a responsible man, who wouldn't mess around with his students unless it had something to do with school, but it turned out Mr. Bennett was no gentleman. She wouldn't have minded his affairs with Diane if her scholarship wasn't at stake. If she failed this project, then she would have to say goodbye to Ivy Grove Institute and goodbye to her dreams of becoming a well-known journalist. Her name had already been stained after the rumors of her being a thief. Everyone knew of the news of her claiming the story Diane presented as her own, because Carlos, the school gossip monger, had published it in the school newspapers. Mia was so annoyed she felt she could punch Mr. Bennet for ditching her in his office for hours. For years, she'd done nothing but focus on her studies just to get good grades, but now everything seemed to be going wrong, all thanks to Diane Foster, who claimed to know her in high school and was getting revenge for something done to her by the delusional Mia she'd made up in her mind. "What's wrong, Mia?" questioned Elizabeth, who was folding the laundry on the couch, noticing her daughter's gloomy mood tonight. "Nothing, Mother," said Mia, forcing a smile so as not to worry her mother with the matters at school. "Let me do that, Mom." She stood up from the small dining table in their house, where she'd been going through the project assignment she was supposed to give to Mr. Bennet to supervise, and took the washed laundry from her mother to fold them herself. "Mom, you should rest and not stress yourself this much. I have told you I would do the folding later, but you took it upon yourself immediately you came back from the eatery," Mia scolded as she folded one of her jeans on the couch and picked up another shirt. She hated to see her mother get this stressed all the time, but the woman would never listen to her exhausted body and work herself out like there was no tomorrow. Elizabeth smiled warmly as she listened to her daughter's scolding. "It is my duty to do all the work while you focus on your studies, Mia," she said, but her daughter pouted disapprovingly. Of course, Mia would never understand why Elizabeth didn't want her to suffer one bit. Elizabeth had already taken it upon herself to give Mia a better life after what she had done years ago. How could she afford to allow her daughter to suffer when she had deprived her of a good life she was supposed to be living in now? It would be selfish if she ever took rest and allowed Mia to shoulder their responsibilities or even do all the work. Elizabeth had been living in guilt for the things she had done years ago, and she would never be able to forgive herself until she had given Mia a better education and a better life. Elizabeth's warm smile turned bitter as she gazed at her daughter. As Mia continued to fold the laundry, a paper slipped down from the couch. She looked down at it with a frown, but before she could bend to pick it up, her mother had quickly picked it up, but not fast enough, because Mia had seen what was written on the paper as the printed words on the paper were bold. It was a loan warning document, which would be due in a month. It was the loan her mother had collected when she was about to start school. But Mia recalled her mother assuring her not to worry because the loan had been repaid, but it turned out it hadn't been. She glanced at her mother, who had gone to put the document away as if not wanting her to know what was written in it. Mia suddenly felt a pang of guilt for being useless at home. Ever since she was a little girl, her mother barely allowed her to lift a finger to assist at home. Even when she turned 18 and was old enough to find a part-time job, her mother wouldn't allow it and would always tell her she needn't work for anything. Knowing that her mother was hiding the loan warning, Mia didn't bring it up nor question why she hadn't been told that there was a warning from the bank. She finished folding the clothes and packed them back to her room. When she got inside, she closed the door behind her and let the tears of guilt in her eyes slide down her cheeks. The reason Mia had chosen to be a journalist was because when she was just 10 years old, she had witnessed how the daughter of their neighbor, Mrs. Smith, became a successful journalist after she graduated. The girl had made a name for herself in the news agencies in the country. She had even built a mansion for her parents, but Mrs. Smith had refused to move out of this apartment as she claimed it had a lot of memories she couldn't leave behind. When little Mia would watch her mother work restlessly all day, she had also sworn to become a successful journalist just like Auntie Lily Smith. At the age of 10, Mia abandoned her own dreams of becoming a musician just to embrace journalism, because she wanted to give her mother a better life in the future. But now, her stupid dreams of going to Ivy Grove Institute to be a journalist had only brought more burden to her poor mother. Mia thought she could no longer continue to do nothing while her mother shouldered the burdens. She decided to do the only thing she was most good at. She walked across the room, slipped into one of the jackets she'd folded among her clothes, picking up her guitar, she snuck out of the house. 15 minutes later, Mia entered a fancy bar that was located a bit far away from Whispering Way Street, feeling out of place among the wealthy patrons. She had heard from Owen that bars like this paid musicians to play music for their customers. She had sang at a local bar before, but she hadn't been in a fancy one like this. The noise of laughter and glasses clinking surrounded her as she walked to the counter. The rich men stared at her, curious about why someone like her was there. She found the bar manager, explained that she could sing for $100, and got the manager's approval after a minute of negotiation and showing her talent in music. She also had to agree on being kind to his customers' behavior and music requests. Mia, carrying her guitar, walked back toward the performance area. The people in the bar watched her every move. As she walked, a young man, clearly intoxicated, stumbled toward her, his gaze lingering on her with a drunken fascination. "Hey there, sweetheart. Let's have a little fun over at my table," he slurred, attempting to wrap his arm around her. Mia deftly dodged his advances, jerking her wrist away from his grasp. "Sorry to burst your bubble, sir, I am not a prostitute." "Oh, a tough bitch," he slurred, and when Mia attempted to walk past him, he raised his hand and smacked her butt. She gasped and froze for a second, but remembering her agreement not to disrespect any of the bar customers, she swallowed her anger and the urge to slap the disgusting man in his stupid face. Mia took a deep breath and reminded herself why she was here and then stepped onto the stage. She started playing her guitar. The tender, warm tone of the strings soon filled the atmosphere. She allowed herself to get lost in the music she was playing, forgetting about the place she was and all her problems. She locked away her disappointment and guilt and got immersed in the only thing that brought her full joy. As Mia continued to be lost in her music, she suddenly felt someone's intense gaze on her from below the platform. Though everyone was looking on and quietly listening to the sad, romantic music she was playing, she could feel a different pair of eyes boring holes in her. Even before she looked towards that direction, she felt bumps rise on her skin as a chill ran down her spine from that gaze. When Mia finally looked towards that particular direction, she was met with frosty gray eyes looking at her. Her heart subconsciously skipped a beat from the intense stare. What was he doing here? She thought in wonderment. Because of her surprise, she almost missed a note in her music but quickly composed herself. Even though Mia looked away from the man, whom she had been so annoyed with for ditching her in his office, she could still feel his gaze on her. However, before she knew it, there was a loud commotion in the bar, and when she looked towards the direction, she was surprised to find her professor slamming his clenched fists against the pervert who had smacked her ass.